This is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And boy, do we have bad news today. Man, if you don't want to hear any bad news, this is not your program. You better go stick your head back in the sand. So once again, we're here in beautiful downtown, Old Town, Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. Right now it's heaven. And I'm here with Kim. She just returned from Peru and Mexico City.
Yes, we did a couple of rich woman events, and there's such a demand for financial education in Latin America. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
So, thank you. And our guest today is Chris Varela. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Chris.
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Robert. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Chris. Glad to have you on the show.
And the reason I say, we try to be fair and balanced here, which like Fox. But anyway, it's called The Good News and Bad News About Money. But I love the title of your new book, How Money Became Dangerous.
The inside story of our turbulent relationship with modern finance, which just came out.
So who is this guy, Chris Varela? Okay, he's responsible for brokering some of the biggest mergers and acquisitions in finance. Chris is listed among the top 100 deal makers by the New York Times and was named Technology Rainmaker by Deal Makers Monthly magazine. So now he's there sitting, counting his money, and his new book comes out soon. It's How Money Became Dangerous, the inside story of our turbulent relationship with modern finance.
And he also knows Wall Street very well because he worked at Salomon Brothers and Citi as global head of technology. So he has that background as well, which is very, very important.
So welcome to the program, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So,
we have a very similar mission, trying to create financial literacy and educating those that want to learn more about money.
Yes.
Anyway, so, give us a little bit your background and how that led you, because you've made a lot of money, to how money became dangerous. What was the genesis of that?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work in almost every aspect of finance: commercial banking, sales and trading, mergers and acquisitions, investment banking, private equity, so every avenue. And I've always, just like you like parables, I love a good story. And so what I did was, as I was experiencing various things in the world of money, I started by loaning money to diamond dealers and gold wholesalers, and I had a shocking moment in my career as a commercial banker, and I just wrote the story down because I thought it was fun, and then I just kept doing that over 30 years. I actually never imagined to write the book, but then I had a few friends who read the stories and said, not only is this a really fun book, a great book, but it's a needed book.
What was the shocking story?
So, well, it's a reveal, chapter 1. I'm not sure I want to spoil, but I was loaning money to diamond dealers and gold wholesalers, incredible characters, and I think we've captured their personalities because they are just larger than life. And it was also the time when the story was it was before the spreadsheet came out, so I was basically doing everything by hand. And then all of a sudden this amazing thing called the computer came along with a spreadsheet, and then all of a sudden you could do it on the computer. And that did a couple of things. One, it changed the way you look at the world. When you can only do it once, you ask the question, what is the most likely thing to happen? But then when you have a spreadsheet, which you think about it, you go, okay, what's going to happen? And you go, okay, that's what I'm going to model. Because you didn't want, if you made a mistake, you had to start all over. But then when a spreadsheet came along, you didn't have to think anymore. You just start putting in numbers, and then you started doing the analysis based on the output. If you didn't like the output, you could change it. So you went from what is most likely to what is possible. And so that did unleash all of the energy and creativity of the financial world, but it also had some really interesting, I think, unforeseen impacts, which it really focused everybody on scale and scope, and most importantly, and this is the theme of the chapter and led to the shocking moment, is it stopped you being concerned with character. So when I showed up at Bank of America first day in commercial lending,
what year was this, Chris?
This is 1985, and I'm a philosophy major at Occidental College Economics, and I know very little about. I actually got the lowest score ever on the pre-test that Bank of America gave to new trainees, so I knew very little But I remember the first day, the 5 C's of credit and, capital, conditions, all those. And the 5th C was character. And they would tell me character was the most important thing. You could ignore the other 4 C's, but character. You had to know your client. You had to know that person. You had to know who you were lending to. And then the spreadsheet comes out, and all of a sudden, character can't be put into a spreadsheet. As I say, there's no column for character, right? So then what happens is, because you can't measure it, you stop thinking about it. You stop worrying about it. So all of a sudden, the 5th C is replaced by credit score. So that's one of the interesting challenges I cover in the book.
And that's when you say this whole modern finance has dehumanized Americans and the world and people throughout the world.
Yeah, we've sort of solved the character issue by saying, look, if we build a model that's complex enough and captures enough, we don't actually care, like default rates don't matter. It's like as long as we measure we factor into our algorithm a certain number of defaults, we'll be okay. It doesn't really matter the character of who we're lending to. So,
and that was,
I'm
Chris,
sure most people have seen It's a Wonderful Life, and it's like the George Baileys of the world, where the banker knew their client or customer or whatever has gone away, and now you became a number. You became a FICO score. You became a score. And then the story is about how one of my clients is this affable, friendly, great, really good fun, and I, because of his personality, I basically grow to trust him. Or another one of my clients who is like swears every other word and whatever, I go, whoa, I don't think he has the character to lend. But it turned out it was just the opposite.
Of course, you hear that, Kim? I mean, she's always trying to stop me from swearing. But hey, anyway, Chris, wasn't that the era of Michael Milken and junk bonds with credit was evolving?
Yeah, no. So one thing leads to another. So that was chapter 1. I just talked about. Chapter 3 is the Michael Milken era, where I talk about, and this is another one of the changes where, up until Corporate Raiders and Michael Milken, your company mission was all about best product and best service. Like if you read the mission statements of companies pre-mid-'80s, it's like, we're going to make the best product on the planet. We're going to provide the best service. And then when management started to falter and we started to see American business not perform, enter the Corporate Raider financed by Michael Milken, obviously structuring these instruments on the spreadsheet and being able to scale and build that product. It did have the benefit of recharging business, because all of a sudden management teams were afraid to not perform. There was a sort of a governor or an entity. But that's what forced, it's hard to believe, and I know we're going through it now with the discussion of the Business Roundtable, that was when mission statements changed from best product to maximizing shareholder value. And all of a sudden then, while that's a good North Star for driving performance, it also made business less human, a little more antiseptic. You were no longer firing Robert and Kim. You were doing a RIF and a downsizing of X number of people under the the protection of we're maximizing profit. Yes.
Right, Chris. A lot of people have no idea what you're talking about right now. See, what happened was back then is that if your corporation was fat with money, that's when the Corporate Raider came in, and they basically chopped up your company. And they fired people. That was when downsizing became, the new word of the day. And so a lot of people don't understand what happened to the character, as you're talking about, of the world of corporations. That's when, I think, was it some guy named Hacksaw Reynolds or something like that was in there just chopping up the pension plans and firing people, and just it was like they took a big cow and cut it into little pieces and shipped it all over the place. And that's when people stopped trusting the company they worked for. Was that era?
Yeah, that's the era. I mean, we would probably debate in some cases the undermanaged assets. I actually worked at Disney at the time when Steinberg did a hostel of Walt Disney Productions. And that was really when the Corporate Raider entered the American mindset, because all of a sudden an American an American asset was under attack, like an American institution, like Mickey Mouse was being taken over by a hostile raider. And I remember working there being appalled by the notion that, somebody was going to take over Disney and, do what they would.
Right.
And Steinberg ended up getting green mail and going away, but the management team changed over and Eisner took over. And look, there were a lot of changes where I was like, hold on a second here. Like, he first thing he did is he jacked up ticket prices. He put all the movies out on video cassette. There was Walt Disney had a tradition where he kept the cost of milk and balloons really low because he believed every kid, should get a balloon and a glass of milk, right? So it was like a nickel. They were like a nickel, like something, very, very low. And of course, he comes in and raises the price of milk and balloons. Right. And I was like disturbed. I was like, well, this is an American institution. Now Disney started making a lot more money and started becoming profitable, and it's become
right. So Chris, Chris,
yes.
Let me ask this question. So your book is called "How Money Became Dangerous." So that was when it all started, with the corporate raiders, and then you were also part of Orange County's bankruptcy, and I think that's an interesting story because a lot of people don't know, because you were on the inside of that one. And I remember going, how can Orange County go bankrupt? It's one of the richest counties in America. And so what was your, if we could simplify it for our listeners right now, what happened?
Yeah, I remember when I first heard Orange County declare bankruptcy, I was like, well, it's not my Orange County, because my Orange County is the wealthiest Orange County. It's got to be Orange County, New Jersey, or Florida, or whatever, because I know there's a whole bunch of them. And then I'm like, whoa, it's Orange County, California. How can that possibly, how can the wealthiest county in America, or one of the wealthiest, possibly have gone bankrupt? And it's basic, it's a combination of things. All disasters have multiple reasons, but at the end of the day, it was because Orange County sought the revenues. Prop 13 came and that lowered the tax base, but the Orange County residents demanded, didn't want to drop in services. And lo and behold, comes this treasurer, Robert Citron, who he claimed when he was, on trial that he had no financial background. All of a sudden makes these big bets on the movement of interest rates, and he did it by buying large amounts of derivative securities, this was also the time when the word derivative entered the.
Although he had no financial training, he really didn't know what he was doing, is what you're saying.
He had none, but he started making these huge bets on interest rates going down by taking the checking. This is the property taxes, right? These are dollars that go to pay teachers and policemen, and it's basically the working capital. It's the money you pay your property taxes. This is what funds the operations of the county. So it's not an endowment. This is actual money to run the county. And he takes that money and he makes huge bets on the movements of interest rates. And for many years he was smart because interest rates were only headed down. And you know how it is when you're right for a long time, you start to believe that you're smarter and smarter, and then you make bigger and bigger bets. And it got to the point where he was betting tens of billions of dollars on the movement of interest rates, and the county was making quite a bit of money. And of course, the supervisors were like, one supervisor actually quoted as saying, like, I don't know how he does it. Thank God he does, right? It's like they don't really want to know. But you only have to look at page 1 of the annual report to see that it was, something fishy was going on. Because how could 40% of your revenue come from interest income when you don't have actually?
So Chris, we're really limited on time, so I need to cut this. So you have Orange County, the richest, probably one of the richest counties in California, a rich state. Then you had Stockton go bust. What was the difference between a rich county and a poor town go bust? What were the causes of that?
Yes, so the rich county made a bet on interest rates, which worked until it didn't. And what's really interesting about Orange County is they woke up bankrupt and basically told the world, we don't care, right? They actually had the capacity. They actually had the capacity to meet their bonds and their debt obligations and pay their obligations. But they said, that's the moment when the populace, as I say, became disconnected from government finance. It was like, I didn't get us into this mess. I don't remember even making that decision to borrow that money. not my problem. So they voted down a tax measure to increase. Obviously, it's a very libertarian county, but they don't like taxes to begin with. But they voted down a simple half-cent increase in the sales tax to repay this thing. Not my, I think it's a Romanian or Polish phrase, not my circus, not my monkeys, right? I'm not gonna deal with this. And so they said, I'm not gonna repay. And then you have a city of Stockton, which is often voted one of the most miserable cities in America. I think it's top of the list many, many years. 70 miles from Silicon Valley, who basically decided to ride the first the .com bubble and then subsequently the mortgage, saying let's be the bedroom community for Silicon Valley. So they invested heavily in residential real estate, building it out, overstepping, but then promising a lot in the form of pensions and, enticing people to live there and work there and stay there by offering up benefits in the future that assumed that the whole world was going to continue up and to the right. And then when it didn't, it all fell apart. And, interestingly, unlike Orange County, they don't have the financial resources to pay, but they actually have quite an amazing leadership team right now that's doing everything they can to turn that city around.
I have one quick question. Quick question is when Orange County said, screw you, we're not going to pay off this disaster, who got stuck with the bill?
So very quickly, and I called it Project Robin Hood, it's actually one of my proudest deal results, was even though the county residents said we don't care, I still cared as the advisor, and I said, look, I'd like everyone, including pension holders, I'd like no one to suffer. And so what we did very simply was we reallocated revenue from very expensive county agencies. So we took money from transportation and waste and water. It turned out there were huge pockets of revenue and dollars there. And I said, look, this should all be part of the tax base. It's all Orange County tax dollars. So let's take from them and reallocate to those agencies that are bankrupt and need to pay off. And so it was just a reshifting. You shifted around money, which was shockingly hard because the political interests of these entities fought us every step of the way. Because they don't have the mindset of Orange County. They have the mindset of I just care about I run the waste system of Orange County. And so what we did was we actually ended up paying everybody off 100 cents on the dollar with interest. We ended up no pension holders lost their pensions. So at the end of the day, all that we did was we forced certain agencies to operate more efficiently.
What you're saying
at the end of the day,
what you're saying is Orange County had the money; they were just hoarding it.
Yeah, they had, it's the wealthiest county in America. They had all kinds of, why does a water district need to own golf courses and apartment buildings and, all of this? What were they doing charging, this is my, obviously political stuff. What were they doing charging water rates such that they could end up buying these assets? And then you went to the headquarters of the, one of these water districts. It was like a Taj Mahal. Why are you, doing that?
Little empires. Little empires.
But so yes, the money was there and it shifted around. Stockton, though, on the other hand, didn't have the resources. But interestingly, they had the political will in order to do it. The interesting thing about Stockton, which is facing almost every entity, is they satisfy the cash demands. All their government employees are coming and saying we want to raise, and say we don't have the cash for it, but you know what? We'll give you a bigger pension and health benefits in the future, because one, it's in the future, and two, it's beyond the term of the political person in office.
Right.
So
not
on my watch. Not my problem.
Won't be my problem, right? I'll solve my short-term problem with a future promise that won't be my problem.
Right.
And that's the modern system of financial government has not kept pace with the modern financial world. So our system of government is antiquated because there's a mismatch between short-term operating, how we operate governments, and the financial complexity, which has time horizons well beyond the term of office of any.
Hey, Chris, we got to go to break. So when we come back, we're talking to Chris Varelas. Varela.
Yep.
His new book is called How Money Became Dangerous. I love what he's saying because I'm coming out with another book called Who Stole My Pension? And we're talking about the same thing. But what's most important to you, the listener, is we want to find out how money became dangerous. Because you read Rich Dad Poor Dad said the rich don't work for money, savers are losers, and your house is not an asset. And I caught hell for all that. So we come back, I'm going to talk to Chris about, since we're a global program, what he sees going on around the world, because this is not just a U.S. problem, it's international. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And like I said earlier, today is about the bad news. There's a lot of bad news. Our guest today is Chris Varela. He's the author of How Money Became Dangerous. Very important show to listen to. Once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them for one reason, so you can listen to it again. Because if you listen to this again, because repetition is how we learn best, you listen to this program again, you'll pick up a whole new thing is about how money is dangerous today. And if you don't understand that, please wake up and smell the coffee. So you can listen to this program again, have your friends, family, and business associate listen to this program and discuss it, and you'll be 20 times smarter than your brother-in-law who's playing golf today. So anyway, our guest again one more time is Chris Varela. Is How Money Became Dangerous.
His new book just came out, How Money Became Dangerous, the inside story of our turbulent relationship with modern finance.
And he is responsible for brokering some of the biggest mergers and acquisitions in finance. He's listed among the top 100 deal makers by the New York Times and is mentioned in Technology Rainmaker by Deal Makers Monthly. And which I'm really happy about is that he had the opportunity to work on the Orange County bankruptcy, which made no sense because it's a rich county. Any comments, Kim?
Well, no, this is fascinating. There's so much we can be talking about because Chris also was with Solomon Brothers City on Wall Street. He's a co-founding partner and managing partner of Riverwood Capital, and there's so many things that we're talking about. So the book is called How Money Became Dangerous. So is money becoming dangerous not just in the U.S., is it, Chris? It's all over the world.
All over the world, yeah. Money doesn't discriminate based on ethnicity, national border, or whatever. It's ubiquitous and of course impacting all of us. Yeah. So I always say now you can pick your crisis du jour, and there's a country that basically has become the poster child for them. Probably mixing metaphors there. Sorry, but yeah, there's a poster child for it. So yeah, you have the demographic challenge, which you see in Japan and China. Japan has now got the highest average age of any country in history, and systems that require the young to pay into, to take care of the old. If there's nobody coming in on the front end and the back end, is not going to be supported. So Japan's got that. China's trying to become, as we say, rich before they become old. We don't think of it, but China's actually is becoming an aging country, and we'll see if they can truly continue on the growth trajectory that's going to allow that. And then you have the what I call the say no to austerity. It's like, okay, we take on a lot of debt, and then we wake up one day and say, oh, you know what, we really don't want to pay that debt back, and we really don't want to pursue business practices that will grow the economy to allow that, and then you have a crushing currency correction. Which is
right. So, Chris, let me ask this question, which we really got to get to, because your book is How Money Became Dangerous: The Inside Story of Our Turbulent Relationship with Modern Finance. There's something I want you to answer for me. How in the world can there be $17 trillion in money that's negative interest rates? I mean, why in the world would somebody give somebody money so you get less back? I mean, what is the logic? I mean, that is as dangerous as that's not dangerous. That's stupid. So why would people give anybody any money to get less back?
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that it's a new phenomenon. We're all grappling with, one, how did it happen? Two, what does it mean? It basically shows that the central bank policies that we've relied on the last 30, last generation are basically come to an end. And you combine that with globalization and all of the productivity gains that come from it, that deflation is just the prevalent for the world of things I say we want. I mean, one of my favorite charts, I think, is one that says the cost of things we want and the cost of things we need. The cost of things we want has plummeted due to technology advances. So I'm talking about big screen TVs and whatever. And the cost of things we need, education, healthcare, those costs have skyrocketed. So in most of the consuming world, deflation is the strongest variable, and the central banks can't really do anything as much as they try. They're powerless to confront it. So the only reason you would give money to someone and say, I'm going to give you $1 today and you can give me 95, 98 cents back, whatever, a year or 2 years from now, is you actually think your 98 cents that you're going to get back is going to be worth more than, it'd be worth 96 cents if you didn't do the deal, right? And so you're under the belief that that's an economically attractive deal. The other problem you have is there's so many hundreds of trillions of dollars that needs to find a home. Where do you put it, and who's willing to take on that volume of money? Now, there's a concern now that you're going to say, wait, I don't want that deal. I'm just going to keep it in cash, right? It's a hard concept to get it. It's a hard concept to wrap your head around the fact that you'd rather give somebody the money and take back less than just keep it in your mattress, at home and bury it in your backyard or wherever, thinking, well, at least I'll have $1. I won't have 98 cents. But the fact of the matter is, because of deflation, that dollar is worth less, and so that's the only reason. And the implications of that are ones that I'm not sure we fully understand. I mean, Germany, just to continue the lap around the world, Germany's growth, it just, is slowing. I think, we've just seen that they've gone, negative growth, and they're one of the only few countries that has not engaged in the whole other side of it, which is fiscal spending. So running a fiscal deficit in order to spur the economy, which is another trap I think we fall into. There's some sort of magic or belief that if we can, keep every quarter we have to keep GDP growth positive, and we're willing to sell the future in order to do that, which is, a trade that I think we're all going to, face when the reckoning comes. And so now everyone's trying to press the Germans to spend more money as a government and to run a deficit in order to keep the growth of Europe, positive and forward. And so it's going to be, anyone who says they can explain this and tell you what's going to happen, I don't think there's really a lot of precedent.
So Chris, let me ask you this. We speak to, let's say, the average person out there, and how can our listeners avoid the danger of money? Well, another way of saying it is, what can you and I do? I mean, we're not going to, Draghi's not going to call me. He's not there anymore. But the central bankers aren't going to call us. What does a little guy do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because the little guy is the one that suffers when these macro policies go wrong. The little guy is the one that suffers because most of their savings, if they have savings, is usually tied up in, is not diversified. So either they're in an asset that happens to be on the right or the wrong side of that. And so,
or even their savings account is being charged. They're being charged to keep their savings in a bank. That's like a negative interest rate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to see policies that are going to keep that at zero. But, one of the first stories I tell in the book is, I worked really hard from second grade to, whatever, and I saved $200 whole, and I left the money in the bank account during my college years thinking, well, it's going to, I'd learned the concept of accumulating interest, and I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be great. Let's see, how much money did I make after 4 years? I'm just going to ignore it and pretend it didn't exist because I understand it. And I go back and I see that the account is empty because they've implemented a service charge and zeroed out my account over the years, and so all the money that I'd spent my life savings had been completely wiped out. And so that was my first rude lesson, a rude awakening in the world of money, and started to question whether or not the world of finance. The answer, and I'd like to tell you that this is insightful and the like, but at the end of the day, the answer is diversification, because you can't possibly know or see. The problem is there's not a lot of vehicles for you to diversify. We definitely cater to the wealthy in terms of wealth managers and advice, and we can all question as to how helpful that is. But that's why what you're doing in terms of educating people in the financial world, I would say is get educated. Also, you have to stay proximate. People have lost proximity to the financial world.
What does that mean?
Either they don't either they don't know what their local governments are borrowing, or now more and more we're getting comfortable with buying stock without even knowing what the companies do. It's
complacency, it's called.
ETFs now are 50% of all stock, and you don't really want to know what's in that portfolio. You don't want to care. And so you just want to know that you're diversified as cheaply as possible, which is a good thing. I mean, diversification is good. Cheap, low costs are good. But, proximity has gone away. And, at the end of the day, we need vehicles. We need more mechanisms for people with limited savings and resources to diversify. At a minimum, if your money's in a pension, you better understand how that pension is invested and actually try to understand and demand and look and read how funded am I, what's the underwriting assumptions, what's going on, and if it's not good, you need to make noise. You need to raise your hand. I think most people look at their quarterly balance and they say, okay, did it go up or go down? But they have no idea, and with just a little bit of work, ask how funded is it? What's your underwriting assumption? Because most pensions have assumed that you're going to make 7% over the life of that pension, and most experts would argue that's too high. It should be 5%. And so you're basically buying and complicit into a fiction that isn't going to be there at the time of the retirement. So at a minimum, you should, wherever your money is, you better understand. You better understand how safe. That's just a starting point.
That's great advice. Chris, we could go on forever. I want to thank you for your contribution to the Rich Dad Radio Show, and most importantly, get Chris's book, How Money Became Dangerous: The Inside Story of Our Turbulent Relationship with Modern Finance. And I think that's one of the most important things a person can do is understand what the heck is happening to your money and why it's dangerous. So, Chris, thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Congratulations on your book, and keep educating people. We need it.
You too. Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
We'd like to have you back. I mean, we could go on forever on this. A couple more bankruptcies I want to talk about.
Happy to come back.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks for answering the questions on Orange County. I always wondered how in the world could a rich county go broke, but now you told me. They just didn't pay. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to the most popular part of our program, which is called Ask Robert. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime or anywhere on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive that so you can listen to this program again, because repetition is how you learn best, especially this program. So I want to thank Chris Varelis. And he's not Spanish. He's actually Greek. It's interesting. And his new book is How Money Became Dangerous: The Inside Story of Our Turbulent Relationship with Modern Finance. And I suggest everybody read that book, especially if you want to understand it, because Chris comes from the big, big world of money. We come from the dinky little world. But he sees it from a different view. And I was especially impressed with his being able to work out the Orange County bankruptcy, because I always wondered, how can a rich county go bankrupt? And then they compared it with Stockton, which is a poor county. They're still working their way out. So anyway, it's an interesting time. You can, anything you want to say about that?
No, I was. There's so much information from Chris, and I thought it was really interesting when he talked about the spreadsheet. That he was always taught that the most important thing in loaning money is the character of the individual, and you've got to understand and learn about the character and learn about your customer. And the spreadsheet literally took the character out of the equation and replaced it with credit score. So all of a sudden, the character of the individual meant nothing, and credit score meant everything. So it's fascinating just how history played out in this whole scheme.
It's a good thing I didn't have any credit score. Anyway, now But it's such an interesting time. Once again, Chris's book is How Money Became Dangerous. And that fits right with what we say at Rich Dad. The rich don't work for money. Savers are losers. Your house is not an asset. I caught hell for that 20-something years ago, and now it's coming true. So anyway, now going to the most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert. You can submit your questions to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. So, Melissa, what's the first question?
Our first question today comes from Annalise in Charlotte, North Carolina. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She says, Robert and Kim, I'm studying your work and have recently started investing in gold and silver coins. My question is, I'm wondering what to do with my savings. I know I need to invest in other assets. Given that I've started with gold and silver, what do you recommend as a next step?
Well, that's a great question, and congratulations for starting. You always start small, but I really don't hold gold and silver as an investment. To me, and we make a lot of money at it, but it's more an insurance policy. It's an insurance policy that pays for itself. So I was listening to this other guy this morning, and he was talking about bubbles and anti-bubbles. So the world is in what we call today an everything bubble. Everything is in a bubble. So you've got to have the anti-bubble, and the anti-bubble is gold and silver. Now, that doesn't mean that gold and silver won't go down when the everything bubble busts, because real estate will come down, stocks will come down, bonds will come down. Everything's going to come down. So will gold and silver. But the question is, what is going to sustain? So gold and silver are anti-bubbles. And as far as cash goes, this is since you live in North Carolina, South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North
Charlotte.
Carolina, great state. We live in South Carolina, too. But what you do with your money depends upon where in the world you live. Like if I was in Zimbabwe, I'd be dumping the Zim dollar as fast as I could get. If I was in Argentina, I'd be dumping that as quick as I get, going into gold and silver. If I was in Japan, you could save yen. If you're in euro, maybe save euro. In the U.S., you can save dollars. So relative to what's safe depends upon what country you're in and how secure is the currency of your country. Any comments on that, Kim?
Yeah, interesting, because this came up the other day when we were talking to Jim Rickards, and he said, when things come crashing down, you're going to want gold, silver, and cash. And he talks about a lot of people are sitting on U.S. cash right now. But the reason they're sitting on it is because they're waiting for the crash to come. So whether it be real estate, whether it be the stock market, whatever that crash is, they then are in the position to go buy up all these assets. So for Annalise, if you're sitting on savings, this might be the time to start getting educated and start really paying attention to what's going to happen. So when this market does come down, then you can use your cash and invest it if you know what you're doing.
And if you live outside the U.S., listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show outside the U.S., you could save U.S. dollars. Yeah. I have a lot of friends. Yeah. I'm not endorsing this, but they have two bank accounts, one in the country they live in and one in the U.S. So they have two things. They have U.S. cash and U.S. passports. So if what hits the fan, they're going to leave their country with a U.S. and come to the U.S. with a U.S. passport. So there's all kinds of things. I mean, I don't endorse any of this, but I'm just telling you what my friends are doing. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Darren in Dallas, Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It says, what do I do with all of my student debt loans? Should I make minimum payments and use the rest of my cash now to invest in real estate, or should I eliminate that debt with every penny I find? And hopefully then I could be debt-free in 5 years and then start investing in real estate.
Well, first of all, Kim said it best. I would invest in education first. If you're going to invest in real estate, I start with Ken McElroy's book, the ABCs of real estate investing, ABCs of property management, because real estate, we had a big program on this a few one ago with the real estate guys. And the problem with most people is they're so arrogant. They think you can just buy real estate and make money. Kim and I have had a number of friends and partners who, they don't know what Kim and I do. And I said, well, and I talked to our partner. They go, do you know I've bought 6 houses? I said, yeah, you bought residences. You didn't buy investment property. I'm a real estate investor. Or the other idiot tells me this, I have a real estate license. At that point, ladies and gentlemen, don't turn around, back up slowly, because you're talking to an idiot. Just because you bought a couple of residential properties and just because you have a real estate license means you're an idiot. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you know anything about real estate investing. And as I said about real estate investing, unlike the stock market, you invest in the stock market, you make a mistake, it's liquid. You can get out tonight. But you make a mistake with real estate, you're driving the Titanic. Right, Kim?
Yeah, and that's why everybody that we know, who we work with, who are partners with us, or who are successful in real estate investing, they start small. They take baby steps.
And they take classes.
And they take a lot of seminars. They attend seminars. They attend conferences. Yes, because you're going to make a ton of mistakes. It's just a learning curve. It's a new area. So if you're going to put a little money down, you better know what you're doing.
I would invest in a real estate class, and then there's a lot of them online. There's plenty too. YouTube's got plenty, but get educated because you're writing something that's illiquid. Gold and silver, stocks and bonds are liquid. You make a mistake, you can get out. If I have $1 million in gold, I can get out tonight. I have $1 million in real estate, I'm writing the Titanic down. So really, those are the ways you look at things. I just can't believe, I can say it now because I'm not partners with them. They're idiots. They're really, I bought this is our sixth house. And I go, you got to be an idiot. Or the other one is, I have a real estate license. Do you? I said, no, I'm not that stupid. You know why don't I want a real estate license? Because I don't want one. I don't need one. That's not what we do.
The only reason I think a lot of people get a real estate license is so that they can save on commission.
Oh, yeah.
And that's such small thinking. Small thinking. Sure, if you're going to buy your first one, you're going to save a few $100s, great. But in the long term, if you really want to be a professional real estate investor, that's not the way to do it. You want people on your team who are smarter, more professional, and know what they're doing that are going to help you to get where you want to go.
So I want to thank Chris Varelas, How Money Becomes Dangerous, because it is dangerous as heck right now. I think we're going for one of the biggest crashes in world history. I don't know when, but it's coming. One more thing, though. You see, the thing about gold and silver, real gold and silver, not ETFs. I don't touch anything paper, gold and silver ETFs. Because anyway, the bond market is the one that's in trouble. It's the biggest market there is, bonds. And the smallest market is gold. So when the bond market starts to come apart, some people run into gold. And gold is razor thin. That market is shallow. There's not much of it. And there's even less silver. So when the bond market crashes, the real estate market, the everything bubble crashes, and they run into gold and silver. That's what causes the boom, is because people are getting in to an asset class that nobody can print. You can't print gold. You can't print silver. It's God's money, which I cover in my book, Fake. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a very exciting time, but not a time to be stupid. Once again, thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show. You can submit your questions to Ask Robert, and thank you all very much.
Oh, esa cuerda